At Westfield Estate, Lena Morgan, a slave with remarkable sewing skills, creates a beautiful dress from discarded fabric scraps. When she's cruelly mocked at a garden party, Silas Westfield, the plantation heir newly returned from Europe, surprisingly defends her. Their forbidden connection grows through secret book exchanges and hidden messages, challenging the rigid social order of their world. As Silas plans a daring escape toward freedom, both must make choices that will forever alter their destinies. But before we start this story, comment below from where you are watching us. The summer sun beat down on the Westfield estate, making even the shade of the oak trees seem too warm. It was the day of the annual garden luncheon, an event that brought together all the wealthy families of the county. Men in fine suits and women in expensive dresses filled the grounds, their laughter mixing with the soft music played by hired musicians. Lena Morgan worked in the kitchen, her dark hair pulled back tightly, her hands moving quickly as she arranged tiny sandwiches on silver trays. At 24 years old, she had spent most of her life as a slave on the Westfield plantation. Unlike the others who worked in the fields, Lena served in the main house because of her quiet nature and skilled hands. "Lena," Mrs. Winters, the head housekeeper, called out sharply, "You'll be serving the guests today, and for heaven's sake, try to be invisible." Lena nodded, knowing exactly what that meant. Don't make eye contact, don't speak unless spoken to. Move like a shadow between the guests, offering food and drinks without being noticed. "Yes, Mrs. Winters," she replied softly. When the older woman turned away, Lena touched the fabric of the dress she wore. It wasn't the standard plain uniform the other house slaves wore. This dress was different, made by her own hands during late nights when everyone else was asleep. She had collected scraps of lavender fabric from the sewing room floor, pieces that would have been thrown away. Over months, she'd pieced them together into a simple dress with small, careful stitches. The dress wasn't perfect. The hem was slightly uneven in places, and the shade of lavender varied where different scraps had been joined. But to Lena, it was the most beautiful thing she had ever owned. Mrs. Winters hadn't noticed the dress yet, or if she had, she hadn't said anything. Lena hoped it would stay that way. Outside, the garden was transformed into a scene from a dream. White tables covered in fine linen dotted the lawn. Crystal glasses caught the sunlight, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the tablecloths. The daughters of wealthy plantation owners paraded in their expensive imported gowns, their hair styled elaborate ely, jewels adorning their necks and wrists. Lena picked up a tray of lemonade glasses and stepped out into the sunshine. She kept her eyes down, moving between groups of guests who barely acknowledged her presence. She was just part of the scenery to them, like the flowers or the trees. "Can you believe what Harriet Wilson wore to church last Sunday?" One young woman giggled to another as Lena offered them drinks. "That hat must have been from at least 3 seasons ago." The women took glasses without looking at Lena, continuing their conversation as if she were invisible. This was how it always was. This was how it was supposed to be. Across the lawn, Clarabelle Sutton held court among a group of admirers. At 22, she was the most sought-after young woman in the county. Her father owned the largest cotton plantation in the state, and rumors said she had more jewels than the governor's wife. Today, she wore a dress of pale blue silk that must have cost more than what most people earned in a year. Lena carefully made her way around the edge of the gathering, keeping her distance from Clarabelle. Everyone knew about Clarabelle's sharp tongue and cruel comments. The house staff had learned to stay out of her way. "Did you hear that the Westfield heir is finally back from Europe?" one of Clarabelle's friends asked, loud enough for Lena to overhear. "Of course I did," Clarabelle replied with a toss of her perfectly curled hair. "Mother says the Westfields are hoping to arrange a match between us. It would be a smart decision on their part. Their fortune isn't what it used to be." The group laughed, and Lena continued her careful path through the crowd. She had heard the whispers among the house staff about the return of Silas Westfield. He had been away for 3 years studying in Europe. Some said he had changed. Others said he had wild ideas that wouldn't sit well with his father. Lena had never seen him. He had left for Europe before she was moved from the fields to the house. All she knew were the stories, that he was handsome, quiet, and unlike his harsh father. As the afternoon wore on, Lena's arms began to ache from carrying heavy trays. The sun was hot, and sweat trickled down her back. She had just picked up another tray of drinks when she turned and nearly bumped into Clarabelle Sutton. "Watch where you're going," Clarabelle snapped, stepping back as if Lena carried disease rather than lemonade. "I'm sorry, miss," Lena murmured, keeping her eyes down. But instead of moving on, Clarabelle stayed where she was, her eyes narrowing as she took in Lena's appearance. A cold smile spread across her face. "What is this?" she asked, her voice rising enough to draw the attention of those nearby. "Oh dear, did someone address the help-in curtains today?" Laughter rippled through the group around her. Lena felt her cheeks burn with shame, but she kept her spine straight, her hands steady on the tray. "It looks like someone took scraps from the trash and sewed them together," Clarabelle continued, circling Lena like a cat with a mouse. "How pathetic." More laughter followed. Lena wanted to run, to hide, but there was nowhere to go. To leave now would only make things worse. So she stood still, enduring the humiliation, her eyes fixed on the ground. "She looks like a queen to me." The voice was deep and clear, cutting through the laughter like a knife. Every head turned toward the sound. A tall man stood on the veranda steps, watching the scene with calm, steady eyes. His dark hair was neatly combed, his suit impeccably tailored. There was something different about him, something in the way he held himself, in the directness of his gaze. Silas Westfield. A hush fell over the crowd. Clarabelle's smile faltered, then brightened again as she turned toward him. "Silas, we've all been waiting for you to join us," she called out, her voice sweet as honey now. "I was just noticing this girl's unusual attire." Silas descended the steps slowly, his eyes never leaving Lena's face. She wanted to look away, but something in his gaze held her. "She stitched that dress herself," he said, clearly glancing once at Clarabelle, "and she wears it with more grace than anyone here." Clarabelle's face flushed red, then pale. The guests exchanged shocked glances. No one spoke. Silas walked directly to Lena, who stood frozen, unsure if she should run or kneel. But then he smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes, and something inside her calmed. "Would you walk with me?" he asked quietly. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A servant, a slave. Walk with him. It was unheard of. Lena couldn't speak. Her heart pounded so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. She looked around desperately, seeking guidance, but saw only shocked faces. Then, hardly knowing what she was doing, she nodded. Silas took the tray from her hands and set it on a nearby table. Then he offered her his arm, as if she were a lady at a ball. Together they walked past the stunned guests and into the garden path that led away from the crowd. Neither spoke until they were out of earshot. Finally, Lena found her voice. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. "Why not?" he asked. "Because it'll cost you something, maybe everything." He stopped walking and turned to face her. His eyes were kind, kinder than any she had seen in a long time. "Then let it. Some things are worth the price, like telling the truth when no one else will." She looked away, unable to hold his gaze. "And why truth is that?" His voice softened. "That you are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and you don't need a title to prove it." Lena's heart seemed to stop. No one had ever spoken to her like this. It couldn't be real. It couldn't be happening. "Why would you say that to someone like me?" she asked. "Someone like you," Silas repeated. "You mean someone brave enough to create beauty from discarded scraps? Someone who stands tall even when cruel people try to shame her?" He shook his head. "I've spent 3 years in Europe, seeing how different things can be. Coming back here," he gestured toward the party, "it all seems so wrong now." A voice called out from the direction of the house. "Silas, your father is asking for you." Silas sighed. "I have to go." He hesitated, then added, "What's your name?" "Lena," she said softly. "Lena," he repeated, as if testing how it felt on his tongue. "I'll see you again, Lena." Then he was gone, walking back toward the house, leaving her alone on the garden path with her thoughts spinning like leaves in a storm. That evening, as Lena helped clean up after the luncheon, she kept her head down more than usual. Word had spread quickly among the staff about what had happened. Some looked at her with curiosity, others with envy, and a few with disapproval. "You watch yourself," Mrs. Winters warned her as they folded the blue cloths in the laundry room. "No good will come from catching a master's eye that way." Lena nodded but said nothing. What could she say? That it wasn't her fault? That she hadn't asked for his attention? It wouldn't matter. In their world, intentions counted for little. Later, as she made her way to the small room she shared with 2 other house slaves, she was stopped by Jenny, one of the kitchen girls. "There's something for you," Jenny whispered, PRSing a folded piece of paper into Lena's hand. "A boy brought it to the back door, said it was important." Lena waited until she was alone in her room to open it. Inside was a fine piece of parchment, the kind used for important letters. It wasn't sealed. On it, in a strong, clear hand, was written a single line. "I meant what I said." Tucked inside, the note was a piece of delicate lace, real imported lace, the kind that adorned the dresses of women like Clarabelle Sutton, and beneath it, another message. "If you ever make another dress, use this. It belongs with you." Lena's hands trembled as she carefully folded the note and hid it beneath her thin mattress. Sleep would not come easily tonight, not with her mind full of a pair of kind eyes and words that made her feel, for the first time in her life, truly seen. On the other side of the estate, in the main house, Silas Westfield stood by his bedroom window W, looking out at the moonlit gardens. The confrontation with his father had been exactly as he'd expected, full of anger and warnings about proper behavior and family reputation. "You humiliated the Sutton girl in front of everyone," his father had thundered. "Do you have any idea how important that family's connection is to us? What were you thinking?" Silas hadn't offered explanations or excuses. There was no point. His father wouldn't understand, couldn't understand, how 3 years in London and Paris had opened his eyes to different ways of thinking, different ways of living. He thought of Lena, of the quiet dignity in her face even as Clarabelle tried to shame her. He thought of the dress she had made, simple but beautiful, created from what others had discarded. Something had changed in him today. He wasn't sure what it was or where it would lead, but he knew he couldn't go back to being the person he knew as before he left for Europe. As the house settled into nighttime silence, Silas made a decision. Things would change at Westfield Estate. He would make them change, whatever the cost, and somehow Lena would be part of that change. 2 weeks had passed since the garden luncheon, and life at Westfield Estate had changed in subtle ways. Silas attended business meetings with his father, learning the plantation operations he would one day inherit. But he also spent time walking the grounds alone, observing the workers in a way that made the overseers uncomfortable. For Lena, daily routines continued, cleaning rooms, serving meals, washing linens. But everything felt different now. She carried Silas's note close to her heart, hidden in a small pocket she'd sewn inside her dress. The piece of lace remained carefully wrapped in cloth under her mattress, too precious to use, too valuable to risk being discovered. W. Hispers followed her through the house. The other servants watched her with curious eyes, wondering if she had somehow caught the young master's favor. Mrs. Winters kept her under close watch, assigning her to kitchen duties where she was less likely to encounter members of the family. "That girl is getting ideas above her station," Mrs. Winters told Mr. Davis, the butler, not knowing Lena could hear them from the pantry. "Did you see how she walks now? As if she's someone special." "It will pass," Mr. Davis replied. "The young master was just being kind. He's always had a soft heart, even as a boy." Lena tried to ignore the gossip. She kept her head down and worked harder than ever, determined not to give anyone reason to complain about her. But at night, alone in her bed, she would touch the hidden pocket where Silas's note lay and wonder what it meant, if it meant anything at all. One evening, as Lena Carr ried a basket of laundry across the back courtyard, a voice called out to her, "Lena." She turned to find Silas standing in the shadow of an oak tree. Her heart jumped in her chest, and she quickly looked around to see if anyone was watching. "Don't worry," he said, stepping forward. "No one can see us here." Lena set down her basket and folded her hands in front of her, unsure what to do or say. "How have you been?" he asked. Such a simple question, yet No1 had ever asked it of her before. Not like this, as if her answer mattered. "I've been well, sir," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please, call me Silas." He smiled, and the warmth of it reached his eyes. "At least when no one else can hear." Lena shook her head slightly. "I couldn't, it wouldn't be proper." "Proper?" Silas sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I've come to hate that word. Proper seems to be whatever keeps everyone in their place, no matter how wrong that place might be." He moved closer, and Lena fought the urge to step back. Being near him was like standing too close to a fire, dangerous, yet impossible to resist. "I wanted to ask you something," he said. "Do you know how to read?" The question surprised her. "Yes," she answered. "My mother taught me before she was sold. I don't have many chances to practice, but I remember." Something flickered in his eyes, anger, perhaps, at the casual mention of her mother being sold. But it passed quickly. "Good," he said, "because I have something for you." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small book. "It's poetry. I thought you might enjoy it." Lena stared at the book, afraid to touch it. Slaves weren't supposed to read. It wasn't against the law here as it was in some states, but it wasn't encouraged either. "I can't take that," she said, "if Mrs. Winters found it." "She won't," Silas assured her. "There's a loose brick in the wall behind the rose garden near the old oak. I'll leave it there for you. You can read it when you have time alone, then return it to the same place." Before she could protest further, he placed the book back in his jacket. "I should go, but Lena..." He hesitated. "The lace I sent you. Have you used it?" She shook her head. "It's too fine for me to wear. Someone would notice and ask questions. Then use it for something else, something no one will see but you." He smiled again. Secret beauty is still beauty. With that, he was gone, disappearing into the gathering dusk, leaving Lena with her laundry basket and a heart full of confusion. The next day, Lena found an excuse to visit the rose garden. True to his word, Silas had left the book in a hollow behind a loose brick in the garden wall. She slipped it into her apron pocket and hurried back to her duties, her pulse racing with the thrill of the secret. That night, by the light of a single candle stub, she opened the book. Inside the cover he had written, "Words can take us places our bodies cannot go. Enjoy the journey. S." The poems were beautiful, full of images of freedom and beauty that made her heart ache. She read until her candle burned down, then carefully hid the book beneath her mattress next to the lace. Over the next few weeks, a pattern emerged. Silas would leave books for her in their hiding place, sometimes poetry, sometimes stories, occasionally political writings that made her think in new ways. She would read them at night, then return them and find new ones waiting. Sometimes there would be notes, short messages asking what she thought of a particular passage or telling her about his day. She began to leave notes for him too, hesitant at first, then with growing confidence as she realized he truly valued her thoughts. It was a friendship unlike anything Lena had ever known. Through words on papier, they shared ideas and dreams that would have been impossible to speak aloud in their world. Meanwhile, life at Westfield Estate continued its normal rhythms. Mr. Westfield hosted business associates, arranged hunting parties, and made it clear to everyone that Silas was being groomed to take over the plantation one day. Clarabelle Sutton became a frequent visitor, always arriving in a new dress, always making a point of speaking to Silas with sweet smiles and lingering touches on his arm. It was clear to everyone that a match was being encouraged between the two families. One afternoon, Lena was assigned to serve tea in the parlor, where Mrs. Westfield was entertaining Clarabelle and her mother. Hidden by her role as a silent servant, Lena was privy to their conversation. "Silas seems distracted lately," Mrs. Sutton commented, stirring sugar into her tea. "Is he adjusting well to being home?" Mrs. Westfield sighed. "Europe changed him. He has ideas that his father finds challenging, but he'll settle down. Men always do when they take on responsibility. And a wife," Clarabelle added with a meaningful smile. "The right wife can be very persuasive." The women laughed, and Lena kept her face carefully blank as she refilled their cups. "There's to be a ball next month," Mrs. Westfield said. For Silas's 27th birthday, we've invited all the Beeson families. It would be the perfect opportunity for an announcement. An announcement? Clarabelle leaned forward eagerly. Well, I shouldn't say too much, Mrs. Westfield replied with a knowing smile. But Mr. Westfield and your father have been in discussions. I believe they're very close to reaching an agreement that would please us all. Clarabelle's face lit up with triumph. Mother, we must order a new gown from New Orleans, something spectacular. As Lena left the room with the empty teapot, her hands trembled slightly. Of course Silas would marry someone like Clarabelle. It was what was expected. Their friendship, if that's what it was, could never be anything more. That evening, Lena didn't check the hiding place in the garden wall. What was the point? She had been foolish to think that books and notes meant anything real. Silas had been kind to her, yes, but kindness wasn't love. And even if it was, love couldn't change the world they lived in. 3 days passed. Lena threw herself into her work, avoiding the rose garden, trying not to look for Silas when she moved through the house. At night, she still read his books, but she no longer left notes for him. On the 4th day, as she scrubbed floors in the main hallway, a pair of polished boots stopped beside her bucket. She looked up to find Silas standing there, his face concerned. You haven't been to the garden, he said quietly. Lena glanced around nervously. The hallway was empty, but anyone could walk by at any moment. I've been busy, she replied, continuing to scrub the floor. Lena, he said, his voice softer now. Have I done something wrong? She didn't answer, focusing on a stubborn spot on the marble. Please look at me, he said. Against her better judgment, she did. His eyes were troubled, searching her face for answers. Meet me Tony Geet, he said, at the old gazebo by the pond. After everyone is asleep, please, Lena. I need to talk to you. Before she could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps made him straighten up and adopt a more formal posture. Make sure those floors are properly dried, he said loudly, as Mrs. Winters appeared around the corner. Then he nodded to the housekeeper and walked away. Mrs. Winters looked suspiciously between Lena and Silas's retreating back. Hat did he want? Just making sure the floors are done right, ma'am, Lena replied, keeping her eyes down. That night, Lena lay awake long after the other girls in her room were asleep. She shouldn't go to the gazebo. It was dangerous, for both of them, but especially for her. If they were discovered together at night alone. Yet as the house clock struck midnight, she found herself slipping out of bed, pulling a shawl around her shoulders, and quietly aching her way through the sleeping house and out into the grounds. The night was clear, the moon nearly full, casting silver light across the lawn. Lena stayed close to the shadows of trees and shrubs as she made her way to the old gazebo. It stood on a small rise overlooking the pond, rarely used these days except by Silas, who sometimes went there to read. Her heart pounded as she approached. What if it was a trick? What if someone else was waiting there? What if... But it was only Silas standing alone in the moonlight, his face lighting up when he saw her. You came, he said, relief clear in his voice. I wasn't sure you would. I shouldn't be here, Lena replied, staying at the edge of the gazebo steps. I know, but I needed to see you. He moved closer, stopping when he saw her tense. What's wrong, Lena? Why have you been avoiding me? She looked away, across the still waters of the pond. I heard your mother talking about the ball, about you and Clarabelle Sutton. Understanding dawned on his face. Ah, so that's it. It doesn't matter, Lena said quickly. It's what everyone expects. It's what should happen. Is it? Silas stepped down so they were on the same level, still keeping a respectful distance. Should I marry a woman I don't love because it's convenient for our families? Should I live a lie because it's expected? Lena looked at him sharp-eye. Don't you understand? It doesn't matter what either of us wants. This is the world we live in. But it doesn't have to be, he insisted. Things are changing, Lena, not fast enough, I know, but they are changing. In Europe, I met people who believe that all men, all people, are created equal. Pretty words, Lena said, but words don't change reality. Actions do, Silas agreed, which is why I need to tell you something. He took a deep breath. My father is sending me to New Orleans next week on business. I'll be gone for a month. A month. Lena told herself the hollow feeling in her chest was relief, not disappointment. "While I'm there," Silas continued, "I'll be meeting with some people who share certain beliefs about freedom." Lena stiffened. She had heard whispers among the slaves about people in the north who helped those seeking freedom, but such talk was dangerous, especially for someone in Silas's position. "You shouldn't tell me this," she said. "You shouldn't be involved in such things." "I have to be," he replied simply. "How can I look at you, at all the people on this plantation, and do nothing? How can I inherit this place knowing it was built on the backs of people who deserve to be free?" He moved closer, and this time Lena didn't back away. His eyes were intense in the moonlight. "I have a plan, Lena, but I need to know if you trust me." Did she trust him? This man who had shown her kindness, who had shared books and ideas with her, who looked at her as if she were a person worthy of respect. "I trust you," she said softly. His face relaxed into a smile. "Good. Because when I come back from New Orleans, things are going to change." He hesitated, then added, "And I want you to have a choice in what happens next." A choice? The word felt strange on her tongue. When had she ever had a choice about anything in her life? "Yes," Silas said, "a real choice about your future. But until then, I need you to be careful. Don't draw attention to yourself. And..." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small package wrapped in cloth. "I want you to keep this safe. Don't open it until the night of the ball." Lena took the package, feeling its weight in her hand. "What is it?" "A promise," he said simply. Then, with a glance at the moon, he added, "It's late. You should go back before you're missed." As Lena turned to leave, Silas caught her hand. The touch was gentle, brief, but it sent warmth spreading through her body. "Lena," he said, his voice low and serious, "no matter what you hear, no matter what happens while I'm gone, remember this. Every word I've written to you, every book I've shared, every moment we've spent together, it's all been real. More real than anything else in my life." Then he let her go, and Lena hurried back through the moonlit grounds, clutching the mysterious package to her heart. The next week passed in a blur of activity. Preparations for Silas's trip to New Orleans kept the house in constant motion. Lena caught only glimpses of him, across rooms, through windows, always surrounded by family or servants. The day before his departure, she found a final note in their hiding place. 1 month. Then everything changes. Be ready. S. She memorized the words, then burned the note in her candle flame, watching the paper curl and blacken until nothing remained but ash. As Silas's carriage pulled away from Westfield Estate the next morning, Lena stood with the other house servants on the back steps, properly invisible, just another face in a row of faces. But as the carriage passed the kitchen garden, she saw his hand move slightly in what might have been a wave. Ain't only for her. 1 month, she thought. 1 month until the ball. 1 month until she could open his package. 1 month until... What? Change, he had promised. But what kind of change could possibly bridge the gulf between their worlds? Only time would tell. And for now, all Lena could do was wait, and hope, and keep his secret package hidden safely beneath the loose floorboard she had discovered under her bed, a small space of her own, in a world where nothing truly belonged to her. Not yet, anyway. The weeks of Silas's absence dragged by like years. Spring deepened into summer, bringing sweltering heat that made work in the main house even more exhausting. Lena moved through her days in a kind of trance, performing her duties perfectly but with her mind elsewhere. Every night before sleep, she would reach beneath the loose floorboard to touch the package Silas had given her, reassuring herself it was still there, still safe. She had not opened it, honoring his request to wait until the night of the ball. But she wondered constantly what it might contain. Meanwhile, preparations for the birthday ball consumed the household. Mrs. Westfield supervised every detail, from the menu to the decorations to the guest list. The ballroom, rarely used in recent years, was cleaned from ceiling to floor. New candles were ordered for the chandeliers, fresh paint applied to worn spots, and furniture polished until it gleamed. "This will be the social event of the season," Mrs. Westfield declared one morning as she inspected the ballroom. "Everyone who matters will be here." Lena, dusting the elaborate moldings that framed the ceiling-high mirrors, kept her face carefully blank. She had learned long ago that being invisible meant hearing things not meant for her ears. "Have you had word from Silas?" asked Mrs. Winters, who was overseeing the cleaning crew. "Yes, he writes regularly," Mrs. Westfield replied. "He's concluded most of the business matters and will return 3 days before the ball, just enough time to have his new suit fitted." "And has he mentioned the arrangement with the Sutton family?" Mrs. Winters ventured. Mrs. Westfield's lips tightened slightly. "Not directly, but his father has made our expectations clear. The announcement will be made at the ball, at which either Silas has reconciled himself to it or not." Lena nearly dropped her dusting cloth, but caught herself just in time. So it was decided. Silas would be engaged to Clarabel, regardless of his own wishes. "These young men," Mrs. Westfield continued with a sigh, "they think marriage is about love and passion. They don't understand it's about suitable connections, about building a future. Silas will thank us later when he sees the advantages the Sutton Fortune brings to Westfield." The women moved on to discuss table arrangements, leaving Lena with a heavy heart. Despite Silas's words about change, the world they lived in seemed determined to follow its usual course. Wealthy families made alliances through marriage. Men like Silas eventually submitted to their parents' wishes, and people like Lena remained invisible, their hearts and hopes of no consequence to anyone. That evening, as Lena helped prepare dinner in the kitchen, an unexpected visitor arrived at Westfield. The sound of carriage wheels on the gravel drive sent the house staff into a flurry of activity. Who could it be at this hour? The cook wondered. "We're not expecting guests." Mr. Davis hurried to the front door, returning moments later with news. "It's Master Silas. He's returned early from New Orleans." Lena's heart leapt, then settled into a rapid rhythm. Silas was back, 2 weeks earlier than expected. What did it mean? She was not assigned to the dining room that night, so she didn't see him. But as she carried laundry upstairs later, she passed his room and heard voices. Silas and his father, their tones sharp. "This is not open for discussion," Mr. Westfield was saying. "The arrangements have been made." "Without my consent," Silas replied. "I've told you repeatedly, Father, I will not marry Clarabel Sutton." "You will do your duty to this family." "My duty?" Silas's voice rose slightly. "Is it my duty to perpetuate a system I find morally reprehensible? To marry a woman I don't love for her father's money? You speak like a child, not a man of 27, Mr. Westfield snapped. "Your European ideas have no place here. This is the real world, Silas, and in the real world, men honor their family obligations." Lena moved quickly past the door, not wanting to be caught eavesdropping, but her mind was racing. Silas was standing up to his father, refusing the marriage. But would it make any difference? And what did it mean for whatever plan he had mentioned that night at the gazebo? The next morning, Lena was sweeping the back porch when Silas appeared. He looked tired with shadows under his eyes, but he smiled when he saw her. "Walk with me to the stables," he said, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. "I need someone to carry my bags." It was a perfect excuse, a master requiring a servant's assistance. Nothing unusual. Lena set aside her broom and followed him, keeping a respectful distance until they were out of sight of the house. "I've missed you," Silas said quietly, once they were alone on the path to the stables. "You're back early, sir," Lena replied, keeping her tone formal in case anyone could hear them. "Yes, things in New Orleans moved faster than I expected." He glanced round to make sure they were truly alone, then added, "Did you keep the package safe?" "Yes, I haven't opened it." "Good." He nodded, satisfaction in his eyes. "The ball is in 3 days. That's when everything will happen." "Your mother says there will be an announcement at the ball," Lena said hesitantly. "About you and Miss Sutton." Silas's jaw tightened. "My parents can announce whatever they wish. It won't make it true." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "Lena, do you trust me?" "I told you I did." "Then believe me when I say that 3 nights from now, Everything will change. For both of us. His eyes held hers, intense and serious. But I need to know something. If you could choose any future for yourself, any life at all, what would it be? The question startled her. No one had ever asked what she wanted before. I don't know, she admitted. I've never thought it possible to choose. Try, he urged gently. If you could be anywhere, do anything, what would you want? Lena closed her eyes briefly, allowing herself to imagine something she had never dared to consider. Freedom. What would she do with it? I would want to make beautiful things, she said finally. Dresses, perhaps. Not just for rich ladies, but for anyone who wanted to feel special. And I'd want a small house with a garden, books to read, and... She hesitated, then added softly, someone to share it with, someone who sees me as I truly am. When she opened her eyes, Silas was looking at her with such tenderness that her breath caught. That's what I want for you too, he said. All of it. The sound of approaching horses made them step apart quickly. A moment later, two stable boys rounded the bend in the path, leading mounts for the morning ride. I should get back to my duties, Lena said, lowering her eyes as the stable boys passed. Yes, Silas straightened his jacket. Thank you for your assistance, he added formally. As Lena walked back to the house, her mind was in turmoil. Silas seemed so certain that change was coming. But what kind of change could possibly allow her to have the life she had just described? It seemed as impossible as touching the stars. The next 2 days passed in a whirlwind of final preparations for the ball. Deliveries arrived continuously, flowers from the finest greenhouse in the county, wines from France, linens from England. Extra staff was brought in from neighboring plantations to help serve the hundreds of expected guests. Lena was assigned to help the ladies with their wraps and personal needs in a small parlor off the main ballroom. It was considered an honor, a sign that Mrs. Winters trusted her to interact properly with the gentry. But Lena knew it was also a way to keep her visible and accounted for throughout the evening. The night before the ball, as the house finally settled into silence after a day of frantic activity, Lena carefully closed the door to her small room and knelt beside her bed. Reaching beneath the loose floorboard, she pulled out the package Silas had given her. Tomorrow was the ball. Tonight she could finally see what he had entrusted to her. With trembling fingers, she unwrapped the cloth covering. Inside was a small wooden box, finely crafted with a simple metal clasp. She opened it slowly. Nestled on a bed of velvet lay 3 things: a folded piece of paper, a small leather pouch, and, her breath caught, a delicate gold ring set with a tiny pearl. She opened the paper first, recognizing Silas's handwriting. Lena, by the time you read this, everything will be prepared. The items in this box represent a choice, your choice. The pouch contains money, enough to take you north to Boston, where friends of mine will help you find work and build a new life. You would be free, able to make your own way in the world. The ring is a promise. If you choose to accept it, meet me at the old gazebo at midnight during the ball. I have a different path to offer, one we would walk together. Either choice leads to freedom. The decision is yours alone. Whatever you decide, know that you have awakened something in me that cannot be put back to sleep. You have shown me what courage truly looks like. With deepest affection, Silas. Lena read the letter 3 times, her hands shaking so badly that the paper rustled. He was offering her freedom and more. The ring could only mean one thing, something so impossible she could barely let herself think it. She opened the leather pouch and gasped at the amount of money inside. More than she had ever seen in her life. Enough, as Silas had written, to start anew somewhere far from Westfield. Then she picked up the ring. It was simple, but beautiful, the small pearl gleaming in the candlelight. She didn't dare try it on, but held it in her palm, feeling its weight, the weight of the choice it represented. Freedom alone or freedom with Silas? Either way, she would be leaving everything she had ever known. Either way, there would be danger. Either way, nothing would ever be the same. Carefully, she placed everything back in the box and returned it to its hiding place. She would need the full night to think, to decide. It was, as Silas had said, her choice, perhaps the first real choice she had ever been given. The day of the ball dawned clear and hot. By afternoon, the house was in controlled chaos as final arrangements were completed. Lena moved through her duties, her days, her mind still wrestling with the decision that lay before her. As evening approached, guests began to arrive. Carriages lined the long drive to Westfield, disgorging ladies in elaborate ball gowns and gentlemen in formal attire. The ballroom filled with light and laughter, music from the hired orchestra floating through the open windows into the summer night. From her post in the ladies' parlor, Lena caught glimpses of the festivities. She saw M.R.S. Westfield, resplendent in burgundy silk, moving among her guests with practiced charm. She saw Mr. Westfield, stern and proud, accepting congratulations on his son's birthday, and she saw Clarabelle Sutton, wearing a gown of pale blue that must have cost a fortune, her golden hair arranged in an elaborate style adorned with pearls and ribbons. But Silas remained elusive. She caught only brief glimpses of him, greeting guests at his mother's side, his face composed but somehow distant, as if his thoughts were elsewhere. As the clock approached 11, Mrs. Winters appeared in the parlor doorway. "Lena, you're needed in the kitchen. They're short-handed with the dessert service." Lena nodded and followed the housekeeper downstairs. The kitchen was hot and crowded, filled with servants rushing to prepare trays of elaborate sweets for the guests. "Take this to the small dining room," the cook instructed, handing Lena a heavy silver tray laden with tiny cakes. "It's for the children and older guests who aren't dancing." Lena made her way carefully through the back halls, balancing the tray. As she approached the small dining room, she heard familiar voices from around the corner and paused. "You can't do this, Silas." It was Clarabelle, her voice tight with anger. "Do you have any idea how humiliating it will be for me when the announcement is Aunt made? Everyone expects it." "I've never given you reason to expect it," Silas replied calmly. "I've been clear with both our families that I do not wish to marry you." "Is it true what they're saying?" Clarabelle's voice dropped to a hiss. "That you've been corrupted by abolitionists in New Orleans? That you're planning to free your slaves?" There was a pause before Silas answered. "My business in New Orleans is not your concern, Clarabelle. It is if you're throwing away everything, your family name, your inheritance, your position in society, for some misguided idealism. I'd hardly call basic human decency misguided," Silas replied, his voice cooling. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I should return to my guests." Lena quickly moved back the way she had come, her heart pounding. She took a different route to the small dining room, delivered the tray and hurried back to the kitchen, her mind racing with what she had overheard. Silas was planning to free his slaves. That had to be part of the change he had promised. But Clarabelle's words suggested he would pay a heavy price for such actions, possibly losing his inheritance, his family, his place in society. And yet, he was still offering Lena a choice: freedom alone, or freedom with him. A chance to build her own life, or a chance to share his, whatever it might become. As the evening wore on, the dancing and festivities continued upstairs. In the kitchen, servants gossiped about the guests, the dresses, the rumored announcement that had not yet been made. "Mrs. Westfield looks fit to be tied," one maid whispered. "They say the young master is refusing to cooperate." "Well, he'd be a fool to turn down Clarabelle Sutton," another replied. "All that money, and she's pretty enough if you like the spoiled type." Lena kept quiet, focusing on her work, watching the clock as it crept toward midnight. The hour of decision was approaching. At 11:40, she slipped away to her room. She had only a few minutes before she would be missed, but it was enough. She retrieved the wooden box from its hiding place and opened it. The money, the ring, the choice. She thought of the life she had described to Silas, making beautiful things, having a home of her own, books, a garden, someone to share it with. It had seemed like an impossible dream then. Now it was a possibility. But which path would lead to it? The money could take her north, where she could be free, but alone in a strange place. The ring meant Silas, and all the uncertainty that came with his defiance of everything his world expected of him. As the hall clock began to strike 12, Lena made her decision. She tucked the leather pouch securely into a hidden pocket she had sewn into her dress. Then, her heart pounding but her mind clear, she slipped out of the servants' quarters and into the warm summer night. The path to the old gazebo was dark, lit only by the quarter moon and scattered stars. Music and laughter from the ballroom faded behind her as she moved deeper into the grounds, staying close to the shadows of trees and hedges. Would Silas be there? Or would something, his parents, Clarabelle, some duty he couldn't escape, have kept him at the ball? As she approached the gazebo, she saw a solitary figure standing at the railing, looking out over the dark pond. Silas. He had come. He turned at the sound of her footsteps, his face emerging from shadow as she climbed the gazebo steps. He was still dressed in his formal attire, handsome in the moonlight, but there was tension in his shoulders, uncertainty in his eyes. "You came," he said softly, echoing the words he had spoken the last time they had met here. "Yes." Lena stood before him, suddenly aware of how different they must look, he in his fine clothes, she in her simple servant's dress. "And have you made your choice?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral, giving nothing away. Lena took a deep breath. This was the moment that would change everything. One word from her would set her life on a path from which there could be no turning back. She reached into her pocket and took out the wooden box, opening it to reveal the content EAS, the leather pouch, and the ring, gleaming softly in the moonlight. "I've made my choice," she said, her voice steadier than she had expected it to be. "But first, I need to know what it truly means. What exactly are you offering me, Silas Westfield?" Silas stepped closer to Lena, moonlight illuminating his face. His eyes were filled with an emotion she had never seen directed at her before, hope mingled with fear. "I'm offering you my heart," he said softly, "and a life together, if you'll have it." Lena's breath caught. Even though she had suspected as much when she saw the ring, hearing him say the words made it real in a way that seemed both wonderful and terrifying. "But how?" she asked. "Your family, your position, everything would be against us." Silas took her hands in his. "I've made arrangements. While in New Orleans, I purchased land in Pennsylvania, a modest house with some acreage. It's nothing, like Westfield, but it's a place where we could build a life together." He paused, then added, "A place where all people are considered equal under the law." "You would leave everything behind?" Lena asked, searching his face. "For me?" "Not just for you," Silas admitted, "though you are a powerful reason, for myself as well. I can't continue living a life built on the suffering of others. I've known that since before I went to Europe, but seeing different ways of living, meeting people who believe in equality, it confirmed what I already felt." He squeezed her hands gently. "Tonight, after the ball, I'm announcing my intention to free everyone at Westfield. The papers are already drawn up. My father will disown me, of course, but I've saved enough of my own money and made connections with people who will help us." Lena felt dizzy with the enormity of what he was saying. "Your father will never allow it. He can't stop it. The documents are legally binding, already registered with the county clerk." Silas's voice was calm but firm. "I know it won't be easy. There will be opposition, maybe even danger. That's why I gave you the money as well as the ring. I want you to have a real choice, Lena. You can take the money and go north on your own, build the life you dream of without the complications that would come with—" He hesitated. "With being with me. Alif without complications. Freedom to make her own way without being tied to a man whose decision to love her would make him an outcast in his world." It was a generous offer. The sensible choice, perhaps. But as she looked at Silas, at the man who had seen her when no one else did, who had shared books and ideas with her, who had admired the dress she made from scraps, she knew what her heart had already decided. Lena picked up the ring from the box. "Ask me properly," she said, her voice soft but steady. Silas's eyes widened, then filled with such joy that Lena felt her own heart expand in response. He took the ring from her, and still holding her left hand, dropped to one knee before her. "Lena Morgan," he said, his voice strong and clear in the night air. "I love you. I love your strength, your kindness, your quiet dignity. I love the way you create beauty from what others discard. I love the person you are and the person you've helped me become. Will you marry me? Will you build a new life with me, whatever challenges may come?" Tears filled Lena's eyes, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." Silas slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her hand. Then he rose and with infinite gentleness pulled her into his arms. Their first kiss was tender, a promise sealed under the lighter of stars. When they finally drew apart, Lena felt as if something fundamental had shifted in the world, or perhaps just in herself. For the first time in her life, she was choosing her own path. She was loving freely, not from the shadows. "We need to go," Silas said, glancing back toward the distant lights of the house. "I've arranged for a carriage to be waiting by the old Miller's Road. We'll leave tonight." "Tonight?" Lena's heart raced. "But the ball... Your guests..." "My parents can make whatever excuses they choose," Silas replied. "Once we're gone and the papers are made public, there will be no turning back. It's safer this way." Lena nodded, reality setting in. They would be leaving everything behind. He, a life of privilege. She, the only home she had ever known. There would be dangers ahead, and hardships neither of them could fully imagine yet. "I need to get a few things from my room," she said. "Be quick and careful," Silas warned. "Meet me at the old oak by the south field in 20 minutes. Wear a dark shawl if you have one." They parted with a final touch of hands, Silas heading toward the stables, while Lena made her way back to the servants' quarters. The main house was still ablaze with light, music and laughter spilling from the open windows of the ballroom. No one seemed to have noticed the absence of the guest of honor yet. Lena slipped through the kitchen, which was momentarily empty as the servants delivered the final round of refreshments to the party. In her small room, she moved quickly, gathering the few possessions she couldn't bear to leave behind. The piece of lace Silas had first given her, her small wooden hair comb that had belonged to her mother, the book of poetry he had most recently shared with her. She wrapped these treasures in a kerchief, along with the pouch of money they might get needed for their journey, and tucked the bundle into a pocket. Then she took a deep breath, looking around the tiny space where she had slept for the past 4 years. She would not miss these walls, this cramped bed, the life of servitude. But she would miss some of the people. Jenny from the kitchen, who always saved her an extra piece of bread. Old Thomas, who told stories of his childhood. Mrs. Winters, who, for all her strictness, had taught Lena to read and write better than she already could. There was no time for proper goodbyes. No time for second thoughts either. Lena pulled a dark woolen shawl around her shoulders and slipped back out into the night. As she crossed the kitchen garden, a voice called out sharply behind her. "Lena, where do you think you're going?" She froze, then slowly turned. Mrs. Winters stood in the doorway, her tall figure silhouetted against the light from the kitchen. I need..." "Needed some air," Lena stammered. "It's so hot inside." Mrs. Winters stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as she took in Lena's shawl and the bulge in her pocket. "You're leaving," she said flatly. It wasn't a question. Lena said nothing, her heart pounding so hard she was sure the older woman could hear it. Mrs. Winters sighed, some of the sternness leaving her face. "It's him, isn't it? The young master." Still, Lena remained silent, neither confirming nor de-anying. "I've seen the way he looks at you," Mrs. Winters continued, "and the way you look at him when you think no one is watching." She shook her head. "It can only end badly, child." "It doesn't have to," Lena finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "The world doesn't change just because 2 people wish it would," Mrs. Winters said sadly. "Maybe not," Lena agreed. "But people can change, and enough changed people might eventually change the world." Mrs. Winters looked at her for a long moment, her expression unreadable in the dim light. Then, to Lena's surprise, she reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small cloth bag. "Here," she said, pressing it into Lena's hand. "My savings. It's not much, but it might help wherever you're going." Lena stared at the bag, then at Mrs. Winters. "Why would you help me?" The older woman's face softened slightly. "Because I was young once too. Because I had dreams that never came true." She straightened her shoulders. "Now go before someone else sees you. And Lena..." She hesitated. Be careful. The world is not kind to people who defy its rules. With that, she turned and went back inside, leaving Lena standing in the garden, clutching the small bag of coins, tears pricking at her eyes. Then, gathering her courage, she tucked the money away and hurried toward the south field. Silas was waiting by the old oak tree, a dark cloak over his fine clothes, a small bag at his feet. His face brightened when he saw her approaching. "You're here," he said, relief evident in his voice. "I was beginning to worry." "Mrs. Winters saw me leaving," Lena told him. "But she didn't stop me. She even gave me some money to help us." Silas looked surprised, then thoughtful. "People can surprise you sometimes," he said. "Even those you think you know well." He picked up his bag. "The carriage is waiting. We should go." They moved quickly through the fields, staying away from the main road where guests' carriages still lined the drive. The night was warm and still, crickets chirping in the tall grass, fireflies blinking like earthbound stars. As they reached the old miller's road, Lena saw a simple covered carriage waiting, a pair of sturdy horses hitched to it. A man sat in the driver's seat, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. "Thomas," Lena gasped, recognizing the old stable hand. The old man tipped his hat to her. "Evening, Miss Lena. Master Silas said you might be joining him on a journey." Silas helped Lena up into the carriage, then turned to Thomas. "You're sure you want to do this? There's still time to change your mind." Thomas shook his head. "I've been waiting 65 years for a chance to head north. Ain't about to turn it down now." He flicked the reins lightly. "Besides, someone's got to help you two youngsters find your way. I've got family in Pennsylvania who'll be mighty pleased to see me." As the carriage began to move, Lena looked back at Westfield Estate one last time. The grand house stood on its hill, windows glowing with light, seemingly eternal and unchanging. Yet in a few hours, everything about it would change. The people who had lived and worked there in bondage would learn they were free. The master of the house would discover his son and heir was gone, along with one of his slaves. The social event of the season would be Remember Red, not for its splendor, but for the scandal that followed. "Are you having second thoughts?" Silas asked softly, noticing her backward gaze. Lena turned to him, seeing the concern in his eyes. "No," she said firmly. "I'm just saying goodbye to a life I never chose, and hello to one I did." He smiled and took her hand, his thumb gently stroking the ring on her finger. "It won't be easy," he warned. "There will be people who hate us for what we're doing. We represent." "I know," Lena replied, "but there will also be people who help us, who believe in the same things we do." She thought of Mrs. Winters, of Thomas, of the friends Silas had mentioned in Pennsylvania. "We won't be alone." The carriage rolled on through the night, carrying them away from Westfield, away from the life they had known, toward an uncertain future. But as Silas put his arm around her shoulders and she leaned into his warmth, Lena felt something she had rarely experienced before: hope. 6 months later, a small house stood on a hill overlooking a valley in southern Pennsylvania. It wasn't grand like Westfield, just a simple 2-story farmhouse with a wide porch and a garden that was beginning to take shape despite the winter chill. Behind the house stood a small workshop, from which the whir of a sewing machine could often be heard. Inside that workshop, Lena Westfield, now legally M.R. as Lena Westfield, bent over a length of fine blue fabric, her skilled hands guiding it through the machine. 3 finished dresses hung on forms nearby, waiting to be delivered to clients in the nearby town. The door opened, letting in a gust of cold air and a tall figure wrapped in a heavy coat. "You'll freeze out here," Silas said, setting down a tray with 2 steaming cups. "I brought tea." Lena smiled up at him, pushing a strand of hair back from her face. "I'm almost finished. Mrs. Patterson needs this dress by tomorrow for her daughter's birthday." Silas looked at the nearly completed gown, admiring the delicate embroidery around the collar, tiny flowers that Lena had stitched by hand. "It's beautiful," he said, "like everything you make." "It's what I always dreamed of," Lena replied, running her hand over the fabric. "Making beautiful things for people who appreciate them." She looked around the Small workshop with its shelves of fabrics and threads, its large windows that let in the winter light. Having a place that's truly mine. Ours, Silas corrected gently, handing her a cup of tea. Though I'll admit, you've made it into a home far better than I could have. It had not been an easy 6 months. The scandal of their departure had been even bigger than they had anticipated. Mr. Westfield had indeed disowned his son, publicly denouncing him as a traitor to his family and his upbringing. There had been threats, harsh words in the local newspaper, doors closed to them even in their new community, but there had also been unexpected allies. The local Quaker community had welcomed them. Some of the freed people from Westfield had made their way north to join them, including Thomas, who now lived in a small cottage on their property. Mrs. Winters had written twice, short letters with news of the plant at Ion and words of cautious encouragement. And slowly, a new life had taken shape. Silas had found work teaching at a small school, while Lena's dressmaking business had begun to flourish as word spread of her skill and artistic eye. They weren't wealthy, but they had enough. More importantly, they had freedom to love, to work, to build something together. A letter came today, Silas said, settling into a chair beside her. From Clarabelle Sutton. Lena Lou kept up in surprise. What did she want? To tell us she's getting married next month, to James Harper, the banker's son. Silas smiled slightly. She also wrote that while she still thinks what I did was wrong, she understands it better now. Apparently she's actually in love with Harper. Good for her, Lena said, meaning it. Everyone deserves a chance at happiness. Silas reached over and took her hand, the one that wore his ring. Are you happy, Lena, truly? She looked at him, at the man who had risked everything to offer her a choice, who had seen value in a dress made of scraps, who had loved her when the whole world said he shouldn't. Yes, she said simply, I am. Later that evening, as snow began to fall outside their windows, Silas and Lena sat by the fire in their small parlor. Thomas had joined them for dinner, bringing news from town and stories that made them laugh. Now he had returned to his cottage, and they were alone. Lena had pulled out her sewing basket and was working on a new project, a small garment made of the softest white cotton, trimmed with the lace that Silas had given her so long ago at Westfield. It's perfect, Silas said, watching her fingers move deftly with the needle and thread. I hope so, Lena replied, resting one hand briefly on her stomach, where the first signs of their child had begun to show. I want everything to be ready when the baby comes. Silas moved to kneel beside her chair, placing his hand over hers. Our child will have everything we didn't, he promised. Freedom, choice, the chance to become whoever they want to be. Lena leaned forward to kiss him gently. And they'll know they come from people who were brave enough to follow their hearts, even when the world told them not to. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the world in a clean, wet blanket that made everything, even the simplest farmhouse, the most ordinary garden, look magical and new. Inside, by the warm light of the fire, Lena continued to sew, creating beauty from simple cloth, just as she had once created a lavender dress from discarded scraps. That dress was packed away now, carefully preserved in a trunk in their bedroom. Sometimes, Lena would take it out and look at it, remembering the girl she had been, the moment when Everett Hing changed, the first time someone had seen the Queen in her. What are you thinking about? Silas asked, noticing her distant smile. The dress, she replied, the one that brought us together. He smiled, understanding immediately. The dress that dared to shine, he said, just like the woman who made it. And in that moment, in the warmth of their home built on courage and love, Lena knew that the dream she had once barely dared to whisper, of making beautiful things, of having a home of her own, of being truly seen, had not only come true, but had blossomed into something far greater than she could have imagined. The simple lavender dress, made from scraps others had discarded, had been just the beginning. The true beauty, the real shine, had been inside her all along, waiting, like a seed in winter soil, for the right moment to grow into something wonderful. The end.